General Base Young-ho stood in the main command center of what used to be Seoul's subway system. 8 months ago, this had been a place where people waited for trains. Now it was the headquarters of humanity's first successful counteroffensive against an alien invasion. The walls were covered with maps showing Valkyrie positions across the globe. Red markers indicated enemy strongholds, while blue markers showed areas that human forces had recaptured. For the first time since the invasion began, there were more blue markers than red ones. "Status report," Seong-ho called out to his staff. Commander Ryu Mi-kyung stepped forward with a tablet full of data. "Our submarine fleet successfully destroyed 3 Valkyrie supply convoys this week. Captain Song Byung-hun's orbital teams have retaken the satellite control station, and Dr. John Yoon-soo reports that the Neural Cascade weapon is ready for large-scale deployment." Seong-ho nodded. The Neural Cascade was humanity's most ambitious project yet. A weapon designed to exploit the Valkyrie's greatest strength and turn it into their greatest weakness. Dr. Yoon-soo had discovered that all Valkyrie technology was connected through a biological network similar to a nervous system. This allowed them to coordinate perfectly and share information instantly across their entire fleet. But it also meant that if you could overload one part of the network, the damage would spread everywhere. "Show me the test results," Seong-ho said. Yoon-soo activated a large display screen that showed video footage from the previous day's experiment. A small Valkyrie outpost had been chosen as the target for the first neural cascade test. "We hit them with a focused neural overload burst," Yoon-soo explained. "Watch what happens." On the screen, the Valkyrie base looked normal at first. Then every alien soldier suddenly collapsed at the same moment. Their weapons stopped working, their vehicles shut down, and their communication systems went silent. The overload traveled through their biotech network faster than they could disconnect. Yoon-soo continued. Every Valkyrie within a 5-kilometer radius was affected. And the best part is that the effect spreads to any other Valkyrie who try to help them. Intelligence Officer Moon Ja-young had been monitoring Valkyrie communications during the test. Their command structure went into complete chaos, she reported. They had no idea what hit them, and they couldn't coordinate a response because their network was compromised. This was exactly what Seong-ho had been waiting for. For months, human forces had been fighting defensive battles and small raids. Now they were ready to take back their planet. "Begin Operation Liberation," he announced. "All teams, execute Phase 1. Across Earth, human resistance groups launched coordinated attacks against Valkyrie positions. But these weren't the desperate raids of the early months. These were carefully planned military operations using weapons and tactics the aliens had never seen before. Captain Byung-hun led the assault on the Valkyrie orbital command station above Seoul. His team used captured alien ships, modified with human improvements to approach the station without being detected. "Remember, we need to take the station intact," he told his pilots over the radio. "The information in their computers could tell us about other invasions and how to contact the other conquered worlds." The attack began with a neural cascade burst aimed at the station's central command center. Instantly, every Valkyrie on the station was paralyzed as their biotech systems overloaded. Byung-hun's teams boarded the station and found the aliens helpless, their advanced weapons useless without their biological interfaces. "Target secured," Byung-hun reported. "No human casualties."
All Valkyrie personnel captured. Similar scenes played out around the globe.
Sergeant Kang Subin's ground forces retook the processing centers in Seoul, freeing thousands of human prisoners. Commander Mi-kyung's submarine fleet surfaced and began bombarding Valkyrie coastal positions with their own weapons. But the most important battle was taking place in space. Pilot Han Ju-young led a squadron of modified human fighters against the main Valkyrie fleet in orbit. "This is different from fighting their patrol ships," she warned her pilots. "These are their capital ships designed for conquering entire worlds. Stay focused and trust your equipment." The human fighters approached the Valkyrie fleet using stealth technology, reverse-engineered from captured alien scouts. They were invisible to Valkyrie sensors until they were close enough to strike. "All ships target the command vessel," Ju-young ordered. "Hit them with everything we've got." The neural cascade weapons fired first, sending waves of neural interference through the Valkyrie fleet. The aliens' perfect coordination shattered as their biotech networks overloaded. Ships that had moved like a single organism suddenly became individual targets, confused and unable to communicate. Human fighters swarmed through the disrupted alien formation, firing the improved energy weapons that Lim Dong-Wu's teams had been perfecting for months. Valkyrie shields flickered and failed as the bioviruses corrupted their defensive systems. Direct hit on the command ship, one pilot reported. Their shields are down. Follow-up attack, Ju Young called out. Don't give them time to recover. The massive Valkyrie command ship, which had seemed invincible when it first arrived at Earth, broke apart under sustained fire from weapons built with its own technology. Debris from the alien vessel scattered across Earth's orbit like a metallic meteor shower. On the surface, Dr. Shin Wanil was coordinating the biological warfare campaign that was proving even more effective than anyone had hoped. The viruses designed to attack Valkyrie biotech had been released at strategic points around the globe, spreading through the aliens' communication networks faster than they could contain them. The infection rate is exceeding our projections, Wanil reported to General Seong Ho. Every time they try to re-establish their networks, the virus spreads to new systems. They're essentially fighting against their own technology now. This was the nightmare scenario that the Valkyrie had never experienced in 846 previous conquests. Their greatest advantage, the biological integration that made their technology so advanced, had become a vulnerability that humans could exploit. Admiral Kim Taemin watched the battle reports flood in from his command bunker. After months of desperate survival, humanity was not just fighting back, they were winning. Global status report, he called out. North America reports 70% of Valkyrie positions captured or destroyed, one officer announced. Europe is at 65%. Asia is at 80%. Australia and South America are both above 60%. What about their space assets? Captain Byung-hun's teams have secured orbital control over most of the planet. The remaining Valkyrie ships are retreating to the outer system. Taemin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 6 months ago, humanity's military had been completely destroyed in 7 minutes. Now human forces were driving an alien invasion fleet away from Earth. But the most shocking development was still to come. Intelligence Officer Jae Young burst into the command center with an urgent report. Sir, we're receiving communications from other star systems, she announced breathlessly. What kind of communications? Taemin asked. Distress signals, sir, from some of the worlds the Valkyrie conquered before Earth. Apparently, our attacks here have disrupted Valkyrie operations across multiple systems. Other species are starting to rebel. The implications were staggering. The neural cascade weapons hadn't just affected the Valkyrie on Earth. They had sent feedback through the aliens' galaxy-spanning communication network. Suddenly, species that had been enslaved for decades were finding their Valkyrie overseers weakened and confused. How many worlds are we talking about? Seong Ho asked. At least a dozen so far, sir. And the number is growing. It seems like our resistance has inspired other species to fight back. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Valkyrie Empire was facing simultaneous rebellions across multiple systems. The species that had dominated the galaxy through superior technology and perfect coordination was discovering what happened when that coordination broke. Down, General Seong Ho looked around the command center at his officers and staff. 8 months ago, they had been hiding in subway tunnels, barely surviving. Now they were leading a galactic rebellion against the most powerful empire in known space. Send a message to all human forces, he announced. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2. We're taking this fight to them. The hunters had become the hunted, and now humanity was ready to become the liberators. The Valkyrie had made one critical mistake in choosing Earth as their 847th target. They had assumed humans would be like all their previous victims, quick to surrender once their military was defeated. Instead, they had awakened a species that turned their own weapons against them, inspired rebellion across the galaxy, and refused to accept defeat even in the face of impossible odds. The harvest of Earth had become the beginning of the end for the Valkyrie Empire. 3 months had passed since the aliens arrived. Dr. Park So-young crouched in the darkness of an abandoned subway tunnel, listening to the sounds of the city above. Seoul was no longer a place for humans. The aliens patrolled the streets day and night, searching for survivors. So-young had set up a hidden laboratory in the old subway maintenance rooms. Other scientists had found her over the weeks. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin, who used to work on satellite technology, and Nam Ye-jin, a quantum physicist from the university. Together they studied every piece of alien technology they could find. The signal patterns are becoming clearer, Hae-jin said. adjusting the captured alien communication device. I think I'm starting to understand their language. Colonel Choi Min-ho emerged from the tunnel entrance, his clothes dirty and torn. He led one of the largest groups of survivors in the city, former soldiers, police officers, and anyone willing to fight back. His people had been conducting raids against alien patrols, learning their tactics. What did you find out there? So Young asked. Min-ho's face was grim. They're building something in the city center. Large structures like processing plants. And they're bringing more humans there every day. Processing plants for what? Ye-jin asked, though she feared the answer. We need to get closer and find out, Min-ho said. But first, tell me what you've learned about these creatures. So Young activated a small screen that showed alien text and symbols. We call them the Velkari now, based on what we've heard in their communications. They're not just invaders, they're harvesters. She brought up another display showing star charts. Heijin managed to decode some of their navigation data. Earth is marked as target 847. The room fell silent. The meaning was clear. You mean there were 846 other worlds before us? Min-ho asked. That's exactly what it means, Heijin said. And according to their records, every single one of those worlds is now empty. No life, no civilization, nothing. Ye-jin studied the data with growing horror. How long did it take them to process each world? The average is 6 months, So Young replied. The longest any species held out was 8 months. Most were finished in 4. Min-ho slammed his fist against the wall. So we're just another job to them. They've done this hundreds of times before. It gets worse, Heijin said quietly. I intercepted a communication yesterday. The Velkari aren't just one species, they're an empire. They have thousands of worlds under their control. Millions of ships. What we fought was just a small harvesting fleet. Deep beneath the city, in an old military bunker, Admiral Kim Tae-min was having similar conversations with his remaining officers. The global communication network was destroyed, but they had managed to establish contact with survivor groups around the world. London reports the same pattern, an officer said. The aliens are building processing centers in every major city. Moscow estimates they're taking about 10,000 humans per day. Taemin looked at the world map on his screen. Red dots marked known Velkari positions. There were hundreds of them. What about resistance efforts? He asked. Mixed results, sir. The Chinese managed to destroy one alien patrol, but they lost 50 fighters doing it. The Americans tried to nuke a processing center, but the aliens shot down the missile before it could reach the target. So conventional weapons are still useless, Taemin said. Yes, sir. But there's something else. Captain Daeho's team in Busan captured a wounded Velkari soldier. Taemin's eyes widened. They took a prisoner? Yes, sir. Sergeant Kang Subin led the operation. They're bringing the alien here for interrogation. Sergeant Subin had spent her career in special forces, but nothing had prepared her for hunting aliens. Her team of 12 soldiers had been studying Velkari patrol patterns for weeks, looking for any weakness. They found it in the aliens' overconfidence. The Velkari moved through human territory like they owned it, which they basically did, but that made them predictable. Subin's team ambushed a Velkari patrol in the ruins of a shopping district. They used explosives to collapse a building on top of the aliens, then attacked with salvaged weapons from destroyed military bases. Most of the Velkari died in the attack, but one was badly injured and couldn't escape. Subin's team dragged it back to their base, carefully avoiding other patrols. The captured Velkari was tall and pale, with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. Its armor seemed to be fused with its skin, and it smelled like metal and chemicals. Even wounded, it looked at the humans with obvious contempt. Dr. So Young was called in to help with the interrogation. She had learned enough of the Velkari language to communicate basic concepts. Why are you here? She asked in broken Velkari speech. The alien's response was long and full of words she didn't understand, but Heijin was recording everything for later analysis. It says Earth is marked for harvest, Heijin translated later. The Velkari Empire needs resources, metal, water, and organic material. Organic material meaning us, Min-ho said. Yes, but it also said something else. The Velkari have never encountered a species that fights back after the initial defeat. Most civilizations surrender once their military is destroyed. Subin leaned forward. What do you mean? According to the prisoner, every other species the Velkari conquered accepted their fate once it became clear they couldn't win. Humans are the first to keep fighting after losing the space battle. This was news that changed everything. Taemin called an emergency meeting of all survivor group leaders who could be reached. If we're different from their other victims, that means they don't know how to handle us, he said over the radio network. They're following their standard procedure, but their standard procedure assumes we'll surrender. Captain Daeho, calling in from his position in Busan, had more information. My team has been watching the processing centers. The Velkari are working slower than they should be. They keep having to deal with rescue attempts and sabotage. So we're slowing them down, Minho said. Exactly. And every day we delay them is a day we can learn more about their technology and tactics. Dr. Ye Jin had been studying the Velkari weapons and equipment they had captured. I'm starting to understand how their technology works, she said. It's not just advanced, it's partially biological. Their tools and weapons are alive in some way. Can we use that against them? Taemin asked. Maybe. If their technology is biological, it might be vulnerable to biological attacks. Viruses, bacteria, toxins, things that would affect living tissue. The meeting continued for hours as survivor groups shared intelligence and planned coordination. Slowly, a picture emerged of humanity's situation. The Velkari were incredibly advanced and had overwhelming numbers, but they were also following a standard procedure based on conquering species that gave up easily. They weren't prepared for sustained resistance from a defeated enemy. More importantly, the Velkari had made a crucial mistake. They assumed that destroying humanity's military meant destroying humanity's ability to fight. They had never encountered a species where every individual could become a soldier. We need to change our strategy, Taemin announced. We're not trying to win battles anymore. We're trying to learn, adapt, and survive long enough to find their weaknesses. Colonel Minho smiled grimly. So instead of fighting like soldiers, we fight like humans. What do you mean? Subin asked. I mean, we do what humans have always done when faced with a stronger enemy. We adapt, we improvise, and we refuse to quit. The Velkari had conquered 846 worlds, but they had never conquered a world full of humans. They were about to learn the difference. As the meeting ended and the survivor groups returned to their hiding places, one thing was clear. The harvest of Earth was not going according to plan. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Velkari were encountering unexpected resistance. They had made the mistake of thinking that defeating humanity's armies meant defeating humanity itself. But humans, as they were about to discover, were much more dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. Engineer Lim Dong-woo had always been good with machines, but he never thought he would be trying to rebuild alien technology in a flooded subway tunnel. 6 months after the invasion, his workshop was a strange mix of human tools and Velkari equipment that Sergeant Kang Subin's teams had captured during their raids. Hand me that power cell, he said to his assistant, pointing at a glowing device that hummed with alien energy. Dr. Nam Ye-jin had finally cracked the basic principles of Velkari technology. Their devices used something like electricity, but it flowed through living tissue instead of metal wires. Every Velkari tool was part machine, part creature. The key is the bio-interfaces, Ye-jin explained to the group of engineers and scientists gathered around Dongwoo's workbench. Their technology bonds with their nervous system. That's why it's so efficient, but it's also why we couldn't use it at first. So how do we make it work for humans? Asked engineer Park Hyun-soo, who had been working on captured Velkari weapons. We don't, Dongwoo said with a smile. We make it better. Instead of trying to copy Velkari technology exactly, the human engineers had started combining alien principles with human mechanical knowledge. The result was something entirely new. Dongwoo held up a small device that looked like a Velkari energy weapon, but with human modifications. Where the alien version had bio-interfaces that only worked with Velkari physiology, the human version had mechanical controls and targeting systems. It's not as elegant as their design, he admitted. But it doesn't need to bond with your brain to work, and we added some improvements they never thought of. Commander Ryu Mi-kyung had been listening from the entrance to the workshop. As a former naval officer, she had been leading the submarine-based resistance from the underwater bases that the Velkari hadn't discovered yet. What kind of improvements? She asked. Dongwoo activated the weapon and pointed it at a metal plate. The energy beam that shot out was brighter and more focused than anything the Velkari used. Human engineering, he said proudly. We took their bioenergy system and added our own power amplifiers and cooling systems. Their weapons overheat after extended use because they rely on the biological components to regulate temperature. Ours don't have that limitation, Mi-kyung smiled. How many can you make? With the materials Subin's teams have been bringing in, maybe 50 per week. But that's not the best part. He led them to another section of the workshop where other engineers were working on larger projects. Massive Velkari shield generators had been torn apart and rebuilt with human components. We figured out how their defensive shields work, said Dr. Shin Won-il, the biologist who had been studying Velkari physiology. They project an energy field that absorbs incoming attacks. But the field is controlled by biological computers that process information the same way Velkari brains do. Which means, Mi-kyung asked. Which means they're vulnerable to the same things that would confuse or damage a biological brain, Won-il explained. Electrical interference, certain chemical compounds, and especially viruses designed to attack neural tissue. This was the breakthrough everyone had been waiting for. For months, human attacks had been ineffective against Velkari shields. Now they had a way to bring those shields down. Captain Song Byung-hun had been listening to the conversation from his position near the workshop entrance. As leader of the teams trying to retake Seoul's orbital space, he understood the implications immediately. If we can disable their shields, our weapons become effective again, he said. Exactly, Won-il replied, but it gets better. I've been studying the captured Velkari soldiers, and their entire technology system is integrated with their biology. If we can create a virus that targets their biotech interfaces, we can disrupt everything they use. Weapons, communications, life support, everything. Mi-kyung looked around the workshop at the modified alien technology and the teams of humans working to understand and improve it. How long until we can field test these improvements? The weapons are ready now, Dongwoo said. The shield disruptors need another week, and Won-il's biovirus needs at least a month of testing to make sure it only affects Velkari technology. Then we start small, Mi-kyung decided. Byung-hun, pick a target for the first test. Pilot Han Ju-young had been waiting for this moment. As one of the few fighter pilots to survive the initial invasion, she had been working with the engineers to develop new tactics for fighting Velkari ships. I have a target in mind, Byung-hun said. There's a small Velkari patrol ship that passes over the harbor district every 3 days. It's isolated from the main fleet, and if we hit it with everything we've got, we can test all our new weapons at once. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Subin's ground teams would attack Velkari positions around the harbor to draw attention away from the sky. Meanwhile, Ju-young would take a modified human fighter equipped with the new weapons and try to bring down the patrol ship. 3 days later, everything went according to plan. Subin's teams hit Velkari checkpoints with the new energy weapons, causing chaos on the ground. The patrol ship moved to investigate, just as Byung-hun had predicted. Ju-young's fighter rose from its hiding place in the ruins of the airport. Her ship looked like a standard human fighter, but it was equipped with captured Velkari engines and the new shield-disrupting weapons. Target acquired, she reported over the radio. Velkari patrol ship distance 2 kilometers. The alien ship detected her immediately and fired. Purple energy beams lanced toward Ju-young's fighter, but she was ready. The Velkari engines allowed her to move faster and turn sharper than any human pilot had ever done before. Firing shield. Disruptor, she announced. The new weapon sent a focused burst of neural interference toward the Velkari ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the alien vessel's shields flickered and disappeared. Direct hit. Their shields are down, Ju-young shouted. She followed up immediately with the modified energy weapons. The enhanced beams tore through the Velkari ship's hull like it was made of paper. The alien vessel spun out of control and crashed into the harbor. On the ground, Subin's teams watched in amazement as debris from the destroyed Velkari ship rained down around them. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had shot down an alien ship in fair combat. Did you see that? One of Subin's soldiers asked over the radio. We actually killed one of their ships. The success of the harbor attack marked a turning point in the resistance. Within weeks, Dongwoo's workshops were producing hundreds of the new weapons. Mi-kyung's submarine fleet became mobile strike platforms, attacking Velkari positions and disappearing back into the ocean depths that the aliens still couldn't effectively patrol. But the real game-changer came when Dr. Won-il completed his biovirus project. The first field test was conducted against a Velkari processing center, in what used to be downtown Seoul. Subin's teams infiltrated the facility and released the virus into the air circulation system. Within minutes, every piece of Velkari technology in the building began malfunctioning. Weapons stopped firing, communication systems went silent, and life support systems failed. The Velkari soldiers inside the facility were helpless as their technology-dependent equipment abandoned them. For the first time, humans fought aliens on equal terms, and won. "The virus works better than we hoped," Wanil reported after analyzing the results. "It doesn't just disrupt their technology. It creates a feedback loop that spreads to other Velkari systems. Through their communication networks, intelligence, Officer Moon Jae-young had been monitoring Velkari communications during the attack. Their response patterns are changing," she reported. "They're starting to act confused, uncertain. I think we're the first species to successfully attack their biotechnology." Admiral Kim Tae-min received reports of the successful attacks from his underground command center. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel hope. "How are our losses?" he asked his staff. "Surprisingly light, sir. The new weapons are allowing our teams to fight effectively while minimizing casualties, and the Velkari seem to be making tactical errors." "What kind of errors?" "They're responding to our attacks with standard procedures designed for overwhelming, technologically inferior enemies. But we're not technologically inferior anymore. We're using their own technology against them, and they don't know how to adapt." This was the crucial difference between humans and the 846 species the Velkari had conquered before. Other civilizations had tried to fight the aliens with their existing technology and failed. Humans had stolen alien technology, improved it, and turned it into weapons the Velkari had never faced before. 8 months after the invasion began, the impossible was happening. Humanity was not just surviving, they were fighting back effectively. Velkari casualties were mounting for the first time in their long history of conquest. The hunters had become the hunted, and they didn't know how to handle it. For a species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, the concept of sustained resistance was completely foreign. But humans were just getting started. They had learned to fight with Velkari weapons, and now they were learning to think like Velkari strategists. The next phase of the war would prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their refusal to accept defeat. Captain Lee Dae-ho stared at the display screen in disbelief. The coffee in his hand had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't remember when he last took a sip. The numbers on the screen kept changing, but they all told the same impossible story. "Sir, you need to see this," said Technician Oh Ji-won from her station across the bridge. Her voice shook slightly. "The signals are getting stronger." Dae-ho walked over to Ji-won's workstation on the orbital defense platform called Aegis. For 3 days, she had been tracking strange energy readings from deep space. At first, they thought it might be a solar storm or equipment failure. Now they knew better. "Show me," Dae-ho said. Ji-won pointed at her screen. "These energy signatures are massive. Whatever is coming toward us is bigger than anything we've ever built, and there are dozens of them." Down on Earth, Dr. Park So-young was having the same conversation with her research team. As the lead scientist studying space signals, she had been working with the orbital stations to understand what they were seeing. "The pattern is too organized to be natural," So-young told her assistant. "This looks like a fleet of ships, but they're enormous. Each one is the size of a small city." Admiral Kim Tae-min received the reports at Earth Defense Command headquarters. He had spent 30 years in the military, fighting in small conflicts around Earth and its colonies. Nothing had prepared him for this moment. "How long until they reach us?" he asked his staff. "At their current speed, 6 hours, sir," came the reply. Tae-min looked around the room at his officers. Earth had never faced an alien threat before. Their weapons were designed for fighting other humans, not unknown enemies from space. But they would have to try. "Send the alert to all stations. Prepare every ship we have," he ordered. 6 hours later, the first alien vessels appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. They came out of hyperspace like ghosts becoming solid. The ships were unlike anything humans had imagined. They looked alive somehow, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Captain Dae-ho watched from the bridge of Aegis as the alien fleet approached. There were 47 ships, each one dwarfing the largest human vessel. They moved in perfect formation, ignoring all attempts at communication. "Sir, Admiral Tae-min is ordering all platforms to open fire," G1 reported. Understood. All weapons fire at will, Daeho commanded. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes. Human missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible barriers around the alien ships. Energy weapons were absorbed or deflected. Nuclear warheads, humanity's most powerful weapons, barely scratched the alien hulls. In response, the aliens fired once. Beams of purple light lanced out from the alien ships. Where they touched human vessels, metal simply vanished. The defense platform Guardian disappeared in a flash of light. The battleship Victory broke apart like a toy. One by one, humanity's proud fleet was erased from existence. Daeho watched in horror as his fellow captains died. The aliens weren't just destroying ships, they were testing human capabilities. Each attack was precise, calculated. They wanted to know what humans could do before they finished them off. Evacuation pods now, Daeho shouted as alien weapons targeted Aegis. G1 and the other crew members ran for the escape pods. Daeho stayed behind long enough to download the platform's sensor data. If anyone survived this, they would need to know what they faced. The pod launched just as Aegis exploded behind them. Daeho watched his command burn as they fell toward Earth's atmosphere. Around him, other pods carried the few survivors of humanity's first space battle. On the surface, chaos ruled. The alien ships moved into orbit around Earth and began a methodical bombardment. They didn't target cities or military bases specifically. Instead, they hit communication centers, power plants, and transportation hubs. They were cutting humanity off from itself. Dr. So-Young was in her laboratory when the first energy beam struck Seoul. The building shook and all the lights went out. Through the window, she could see fires burning across the city. In the sky, dark shapes moved like predators circling their prey. Admiral Taemin tried to coordinate Earth's defense from his bunker, but it was hopeless. Every time human forces gathered, the aliens destroyed them from orbit. Ground-based missiles couldn't reach the alien ships. Fighter jets were swatted down like insects. "Sir, we're getting reports from around the globe," an officer said. "New York, Moscow, Beijing, London, they're all under attack. The aliens are hitting every major city simultaneously." Taemin closed his eyes. In 30 years of military service, he had never felt so powerless. Humanity's greatest weapons were useless against this enemy. The bombardment continued for 3 days. The aliens seemed to have unlimited patience and ammunition. They methodically destroyed everything that allowed human civilization to function. Satellites, internet cables, power grids, government buildings. All of it was reduced to rubble. But something strange happened on the 4th day. The bombardment stopped. Captain Daeho, who had been hiding in the ruins of a military base, looked up at the sky. The alien ships were still there, dark shapes blocking out the stars. But they weren't firing anymore. Using an emergency radio, he managed to contact other survivors. Dr. So-Young was alive, hiding in the subway tunnels under Seoul. Admiral Taemin was in his bunker, still trying to command forces that barely existed. All across Earth, small groups of humans had survived the initial assault. That's when the second phase began. Smaller ships descended from the alien fleet. These were different from the massive destroyers that had bombarded Earth. They were sleek, fast, and carried troops. The aliens were coming down to finish the job personally. The first alien soldiers that humans saw were tall and pale, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dark. They wore armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. They moved through the ruins of human cities like they owned them, but they didn't kill everyone they found. Instead, they captured humans and loaded them onto transport ships. Daeho watched from hiding as entire neighborhoods were emptied of people. The aliens were taking prisoners, but for what purpose? Dr. So-Young, hidden in her underground laboratory, intercepted alien communications. She couldn't understand their language, but the signal patterns told a story. The aliens were reporting to someone. This wasn't their final destination. Earth was just another stop on a longer journey. As the first week of occupation ended, one thing became clear. The aliens didn't see humans as enemies to defeat. They saw them as resources to harvest. Earth wasn't being conquered. It was being processed. In bunkers and caves around the world, the survivors of humanity's first contact with alien life began to understand the truth. They were prey and the hunters had come to collect them. But Captain Daeho, Dr. So-Young, Admiral Taemin, and thousands of other humans were still alive. The aliens had made their first mistake. They had assumed that defeating humanity's military meant defeating humanity itself. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Fleet Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, humanity's first interstellar warship. 1 year had passed since the Velkari invasion began, and now human ships traveled between the stars using technology that had once seemed like magic. Dr. Kwon Minji's breakthrough in faster-than-light travel had changed everything. By studying captured Velkari hyperspace engines and combining them with human engineering, she had created something the aliens never expected, ships that could travel faster than their own. "Admiral, we're receiving the final status reports from Earth," reported Communications Officer Lee Yu-jin from her station. "Go ahead," Hyun-woo said. "All Velkari forces have been eliminated or captured. The planet is completely under human control. General Bae Seong-ho reports that reconstruction efforts are ahead of schedule." Hyun-woo nodded. Earth's liberation had taken 8 months, but humanity hadn't stopped there. Once they learned to build interstellar ships, they immediately began planning to take the fight to the Velkari homeworld. "What's our fleet status?" he asked. Captain Jong Hwan-suk, commander of the flagship Retribution, stepped forward. "We have 47 ships ready for the final assault, sir. Each one is equipped with neural cascade weapons and the latest biovirus systems. Our crews are a mix of human pilots and volunteer fighters from the liberated worlds." The Liberation Fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of conquering worlds for resources, humans had been liberating them and asking for volunteers. Species that had been enslaved by the Velkari for centuries were eager to join the fight against their former masters. "Ambassador Yu-jin, what's the latest from the Liberation Coalition?" Hyun-woo asked. Ambassador Lee Yu-jin had spent months traveling between star systems, coordinating with the species that had joined humanity's rebellion. Her work had created the first multi-species alliance in galactic history based on cooperation instead of conquest. 63 worlds have joined the coalition, sir," she reported. "The Krellian Republic is contributing their stealth technology. The Zephyrian clans are sharing their shield harmonics, and the Tal'Dorei Collective has provided biological weapons specifically designed to target Velkari physiology." This was what made humanity different from every other species the Velkari had encountered. Instead of fighting alone, humans had turned their resistance into a galaxy-wide movement. The aliens who had conquered through fear and isolation now faced an alliance united by hope and shared purpose. "Time to target?" Hyun-woo asked. 6 hours until we reach the Velkari homeworld, sir," reported navigator Kim Dong-hyun from his station. The bridge fell silent as everyone contemplated what they were about to do. In 1 year, humanity had gone from a barely spacefaring species to the leaders of a galactic liberation force. Now they were about to face the Velkari Empire at its center of power. Dr. Shin Won-il, now serving as the fleet's biological warfare specialist, had spent months preparing for this moment. "The viruses are ready, sir," he reported. "We've created strains specifically targeting every type of Velkari biotechnology we've encountered. Once we release them into their homeworld's atmosphere, their entire technological infrastructure will be compromised." Engineer Lim Dong-woo, who had become the fleet's chief weapons designer, added his own report. "All ships are equipped with the Mark 7 neural cascade weapons. These are 100 times more powerful than what we used at Earth. They should be able to disrupt Velkari networks across an entire planet." Intelligence Officer Moon Jae-young had been analyzing Velkari communications intercepts for weeks. "Their command structure is already weakened, sir. The simultaneous rebellions across their empire have created chaos in their leadership. They're pulling ships back from occupied worlds to defend their homeworld, but it's too late. Most of their fleet is scattered across the galaxy trying to suppress rebellions." This was the consequence of the Velkari's own success. For millennia, they had conquered so many worlds that their forces were spread thin across thousands of systems. When humanity inspired galaxy-wide rebellions, the Velkari didn't have enough ships to fight everywhere at once. "Sir, we're detecting the edge of the Velkari home system," Sensor Operator Park Soo-jin announced. "Put it on screen," Hyun-woo ordered. The main display showed a star system unlike anything the human crews had seen before. Massive artificial structures orbited the central star, harvesting its energy. Planets had been converted into industrial complexes the size of continents. This was the heart of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. "Scanning for defensive positions," reported Tactical Officer Choi Young-ho. "Sir, they have A lot of ships, Young-ho said after a moment. I'm reading over 300 Velkari vessels in defensive positions around their homeworld. Captain Hwan-suk smiled grimly. Still outnumbered, just like at Earth. Some things never change. But Admiral Hyeon-woo wasn't worried. The Liberation Fleet had advantages that the original Earth defenders never had. Superior technology, experienced crews, and allies throughout the galaxy. Signal the fleet, he announced. Begin the assault. The battle for the Velkari homeworld began with a coordinated neural cascade attack from all 47 human ships. The weapons fired simultaneously, sending waves of neural interference through the massive Velkari defense network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Ships that had moved in perfect formation suddenly lost coordination as their biotech networks overloaded. Defensive platforms went silent as their biological computers crashed. The Velkari's greatest strength became their greatest weakness in a single moment. Direct hits across the entire defensive grid, reported Young-ho. Enemy coordination is completely disrupted. All ships. Advance to Phase 2, Hyun-woo ordered. The Liberation Fleet moved forward, firing the improved energy weapons that human engineers had been perfecting for months. But this time they weren't alone. Ships from dozens of liberated species joined the attack, each contributing their own technologies and tactics. Dr. Wanil released the bioviruses into the planet's atmosphere using specially designed delivery pods. Within minutes, every piece of Velkari technology on the surface began malfunctioning as the viruses spread through their biological networks. Surface defenses are going offline, reported Ja Young. The viruses are working faster than projected. The entire planet's technological infrastructure is collapsing. On the surface of the Velkari homeworld, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in their history, the galaxy's apex predators were facing the possibility of defeat. Velkari leaders who had never experienced fear were suddenly helpless as their technology abandoned them. Ships crashed as their biological guidance systems failed. Weapons stopped working as their neural interfaces overloaded. Communication networks went silent as the viruses corrupted their biotech foundations. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, Yujin announced. Put it through, Hyun-woo said. The voice that came through the speakers spoke in broken human language, clearly translated by emergency systems. This is High Commander Veltar of the Velkari Empire. We request terms for surrender. The bridge fell completely silent. No one had ever heard of the Velkari asking for surrender terms. In their 846 previous conquests, they had always been the ones demanding submission. Ambassador Yujin stepped forward. Admiral, permission to respond? Hyun-woo nodded. This was the moment that would define the future of the galaxy. High Commander Veltar, Yujin said clearly. This is Ambassador Lee Yujin of the Liberation Coalition. Your empire is finished. Your fleets are scattered, your subject worlds are in rebellion, and your homeworld is defenseless. But we are not here for conquest. We are here to offer you the same choice you never gave your victims. Surrender and live under occupation, or face complete destruction. The silence stretched for long minutes as the Velkari leadership considered options they had never had to face before. We accept your terms, came the eventual reply. Admiral Hyun-woo looked around the bridge at his crew, humans who 1 year ago had been fighting for survival in subway tunnels, now accepting the surrender of a galactic empire. Signal all coalition forces, he announced. The war is over. Begin humanitarian operations on the surface. 5 years later, Ambassador Yujin stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the new Galactic Federation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to celebrate the 5th anniversary of liberation from Velkari rule. The former Velkari homeworld had been transformed into the Federation's capital, a symbol of how cooperation could replace conquest. The Velkari themselves had become productive members of galactic society, their advanced biological technology now used for healing instead of harvesting. The greatest victory, Yujin told the assembled delegates, was not military or technological. It was proving that no species, no matter how advanced or powerful, has the right to dominate others. The galaxy belongs to all of us, and together we can achieve more than any empire ever could. In the audience, many of the humans who had fought in the resistance smiled as they remembered the early days. Captain Daeho, now an admiral in the Federation Navy, Dr. So Young, who led the Federation's Scientific Council, General Seong Ho, who commanded the peacekeeping forces that protected liberated worlds,